Welcome to Hardwood Handicappers with Zach Cohen, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is Zachary Cohen with VSiN.com with another episode of Hardwood Handicappers. Today is Monday, February 2nd. We are recording this at 10 a.m. Eastern. There's only 4 games on the slate for tonight. I do have picks for all of them, or kind of picks for all of them, because I do have one 2-leg parlay that loops in 2 of the games together. So I'll have action for you on this, light night, but we will talk a little bit at the end as well about the trade we saw over the weekend between the Cavaliers and the Kings. One that I actually do think is a little bit bigger than people are leading on for this season. And then we'll talk a little bit about Giannis, what we saw in Thunder Nuggets last night, a little bit of everything. But we'll start with the Pelicans at the Hornets. This game tips at 7 p.m. Eastern, and this is a game where I am looking to parlay because I like Charlotte on the money line against New Orleans, and I also have a lean on the Sixers against the Clippers at 10 p.m. Eastern, but I don't trust Philly fully in that game. So I'm going to take the Hornets money line against the Pelicans with the 76ers plus 10.5 against the Clippers. That's out there at minus 130. It was out there at MGM. It might move a little bit by the time you hear this, but the price shouldn't be that different. And this is one that I really like. I'm going to be playing it to win 1.5 units. With that first game, it's just a loaded Charlotte team at this point. Like, I know that I've talked a lot on this show about how you really couldn't factor in their numbers too much because they had a 55-point win over the Jazz that was kind of skewing everything. But they've now played enough since then that you could break it down a little bit and still see that they are one of the strongest teams in the league over the last 11 games. So that excludes that 55-point win. They are 8-3 with a net rating of plus 9.3. They are the number 1 offensive team in the league in that stretch with a 120.4 offensive rating. Their defense is number 10 in the league at 111.1. They have just been great on both sides of the ball, or both ends of the floor. Sorry, this isn't football. But I do think this is a team that is really thriving right now. They have those guys healthy, LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller. As long as those 3 are out there with Moussa Diabate, who's been great for them at the center position, this is a team that should be treated like one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. We've seen enough now to say that. So this Charlotte team is going to beat New Orleans. New Orleans, if you look at the same 11-game sample, they are just 4-7 with a minus 3.3 net rating. Honestly, they're playing a little bit better lately. They've been a little bit more competitive, but I do think this is a game that Charlotte wins at home. I would be really surprised if the Hornets can't find a way. This feels like a team that can now be trusted. At least a little bit, at least in a game like this. So I like the Hornets on the money line. And then the reason that I'm taking the Sixers in the other game is it's a really interesting rest situation where the Clippers are playing a third game in 4 nights, also the second leg of a back-to-back. And I just don't know that we're going to see all of the Los Angeles Stars out there. I mean, Kawhi played last night against Phoenix. I'm not sure they're going to be quick to play him on the second leg of a back-to-back, given all the injuries he's dealt with this year. I'm not sure we're going to see James Harden out there. I would assume we would because he missed last night's game for personal reasons. It wasn't any type of injury, but I'm not sure if we're going to see him out there. If we do, that gives the Clippers a chance. That's why I wanted some extra cushion with the Sixers, but I do think Philly has enough to keep this game close and potentially win with the rest advantage. I mean, you look at what this team has done lately, they've been rock solid. And I know that they just lost Paul George to an anti-drug policy suspension, 25 games. I should mention that was drugs, not doping. I keep seeing a lot of people saying that George went for 30 or whatever, and then they had to drug test him, but it was not, PEDs. It was something that he took, and he mentioned that it was for, his medical health history. Mental health, not medical, mental health. So it was not, steroids or anything like that. And it's still a team, though, that I believe is going to be very good the rest of the season, just because I think Joel Embiid has proven now that he is very close to being the player he once was offensively. He's not quite there, but he's coming off a 40.11 rebound game against the Pelicans, averaging 26.2 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.9 assists per game this season. And he's in the 96th percentile in offensive estimated plus minus at plus 3.5. That's a little bit below what prime Embiid was, but way higher than what Embiid was last year and way higher than I think that this Philly team probably imagined him being, heading into this season. I don't think that anyone really knew what they were going to get from Embiid. It's been damn close to being the MVP on offense. I think that the defense has slipped, but I do think this is a game that he can dominate even against Ivica Zubats. And I do think that the speed of Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe against, a Clippers team that's a little bit slower in the backcourt, if they do have Harden out there, it could be a problem. I could see those two really just getting up there and burning them off the floor. I just kind of think that this Philly team is talented and well coached, and I think that they are playing together. I know that there was like a loss to the Knicks at home, a couple games ago, but outside of that, they've been really, really strong, and they look like one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. So I think that plus 10.5, giving yourself that extra, cushion should work out well. So this is a good way to buy down on the Hornets. And I just think this is a parlay that we're going to see hit with the Clippers being, kind of tired heading into this game. The next game I want to talk about is the Rockets at the Pacers. This game tips at 7 p.m. Eastern, and this is a game where I'm playing Indiana plus 7.5. This is minus 126 to win 1.5 units. I'm also playing the Pacers on the money line at plus 205 and risking 0.5 units. I bought up a little to 7.5. This was 6.5 pretty much everywhere, but you got a good price on 7.5. So shop around, see if you can get what I got. If you have to take 6.5 or 7, no big deal. The reason that I like the Pacers tonight really has a lot to do with Kevin Durant being out for Houston. I mean, with the Durant out, what is going to be the way that this team operates offensively? I don't know that this Rockets team is prepared to play a game without him right now. Alperen Şengün is going to be relied on heavily in the post in this game. They're just going to dump the ball inside to him, allow him to do absolutely everything. But Şengün's been a little bit banged up, hasn't played that well over the last couple of weeks. And I just think that they need a little bit more outside of him, which is why they made the trade for Durant in the first place. But when Durant is sitting, you don't have Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks anymore. You just have everybody else that has not been a trustworthy group this season. I think that outside of Durant and Şengün, this Houston team offensively has really been lacking this season, outside of when they play Reed Shepherd, who I think is fantastic, but they don't seem to trust him fully because what he does on the other end of the floor, which is, he's a bit of a sieve defensively, that hurts them a little. I think they're probably going to have to play him here. But that might end up being good for the Pacers because I do think this Indiana team is starting to figure some things out. They're actually 5-1 in their last 6 home games, plus 4.8 net rating in that span, and just starting to get a little bit healthier. I mean, they're never going to have Tyrese Halliburton back, not until next season, but everybody else is starting to come out and play pretty well. I mean, Mathurin has played a little bit better ever since coming back from that injury. Nesmith has come in, giving them that 3-and-D at the 2-guard spot. I think this team is playing a little bit better. I think they love playing in Indiana, and I just kind of think that this is a game where you can trust the Pacers to keep it close against a shorthanded Rockets team. I also think the rest situation does favor Indiana. Houston is playing in a really weird spot where they are coming off of a day off, but this team under Ime Udoka is 24-29 against the spread when playing 8 or more games in a span of 2 weeks. They have played a lot of basketball lately, even if they last played Saturday. But I think that this is going to be a spot where there could be some tired legs, and the Pacers have been just strong as a home underdog under Rick Carlisle, and especially with these spreads. I mean, this is a trend that only applies at some sports books tonight, but they are 41-26-1 against the spread as home underdogs of 6 or fewer under Carlisle. And like I said, this spread is 6.5 in some places. It is 6 elsewhere, so the trend kind of applies. But this is also an Indiana team that is well rested right now, playing only their second game in 5 days. Under Carlisle, they are 57-52 straight up and 66-42-1 against the spread when playing only 2 games in 5 days. That against the spread one, pretty damn strong. That's a really, really strong percentage. So 66-42-1, I'll take my chances. But I do think this is a game the Pacers have a really good shot of winning outright. So I think the Pacers plus 7.5, Pacers money line, I'd be firing up both tonight. Before we hit on that last game, we're getting ready for Big Game 60 with a big deal to match. Save $60 off a VSiN Pro annual subscription when you sign up using promo code HARDWOOD, all one word. Become a VSiN Pro annual subscriber, bet smarter all year long with full access to our daily best bets from VSiN hosts and guests, real-time DraftKings and Circa betting splits, AI-powered prop tools and matchup analysis, 24/7 video and full show replays on the VSiN Watch app, plus all of our betting guides and expert picks for the Super Bowl and upcoming March Madness. Don't miss out on this big game deal. Visit vsin.com/subscribe and use promo code Hardwood to save $60 off a vsin Pro annual subscription today. That's vsin.com/subscribe and HARDWOOD. I mentioned it. When you get a vsin Pro subscription, you get access to all of our stuff. So while it is a big game 60, promo code, you're getting access to all of our other sports, and that includes my tennis stuff. I did hit Elena Rybakina to win the Australian Open at 8-1. That was nice, and I'm going to be doing a lot more tennis over the next couple of weeks and over the rest of the year. Honestly, that sport never stops. So definitely a good time to be a vsin Pro, and March Madness is coming up. We're going to have a lot for that. So strongly suggest taking advantage of that offer. Let's wrap up the games for tonight with the Timberwolves at the Grizzlies. This game tips at 7 p.m. Eastern. I did go a little bit out of order because the Sixers game is the last game of the day, but didn't want to wait to talk about that one when I had a parlay with an earlier game. But Timberwolves, Grizzlies, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. This is a game where Minnesota does have Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle listed as questionable on the injury report, and Jaren Jackson questionable for Memphis. So keep an eye on the injury report if you're looking for sides or totals in this one. I had a slight lean to Memphis on the spread. Not going to take it until I know a little bit more about the injury report, but I did play Rudy Gobert to have a double-double at plus 105, and I think this is a really strong one because the Grizzlies are playing without Zach Edey and Santi Aldama. That's two players with some real size, and Edey being the one that if these two were actually matched up to full strength, it'd be Edey and Gobert in like a Godzilla versus King Kong situation inside the paint. Like it's two massive humans, but with no Edey out there, Gobert is going to be the biggest player on the floor. I think he's going to dominate the boards in this one. He actually just had 16 rebounds against this Grizzlies team on Saturday. And that's the second time this season that he's had 16 rebounds against this Memphis team. So he takes advantage of there being no Edey out there. And I don't see the rebounds going away here. The question is whether or not Gobert will score 10 plus, at least in my opinion. And he only had 9 last game, but he did have 16 the game before. I would expect him to be, in the 12 to 14 range here. I just kind of think that between putbacks, pick and roll finishes, all of that, I'd be surprised if he doesn't reach double digits in scoring, especially if Randle doesn't play and you just see a little bit of an uptick in minutes with, Randle, Naz Reid playing a little bit more, and you get, Johan Berenger off the bench a little bit. But I do think Gobert's role would be increased at least a little. I just really like this play for Gobert to make his mark on this game. And it's a Grizzlies team that, like, when Edey was playing, they looked fantastic defensively, and their metrics, still look okay defensively, despite the fact that Edey played very little this season. But it has been, an average to below average defense without Edey. And I think that, that Gobert could take advantage of it. All right, that's it for the games for tonight, but there actually was quite a bit to talk about from the weekend. I'll start with the game we saw last night, which was kind of the game of the night, and I believe a Western Conference Finals preview. We'll see. I think there are some other teams that might have something to say about that, but the Thunder went into Denver and faced the Nuggets last night, and it was a weird game because, Oklahoma City was a 4.5-point favorite early in the day, and it ballooned all the way up to 8.5 at one point, to the point that I actually got suckered in and ended up playing Denver. So I ended up losing last night, but it ended up being a 121 to 111 win for the Thunder. A really impressive win, but probably not one that you should put too much stock into, only because Nikola Jokic still isn't playing his normal minutes workload after coming off his knee injury. There's also a lot of guys out for both teams. I mean, it's J-Dub, Alex Caruso, both out for the Thunder. That is not good. I mean, those are two of the better players in the team. Also, AJ Mitchell was missing, a good bench scorer for them. But then for the Nuggets, it's Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, Cam Johnson, like just so many players missing that I don't really want to read too much into it. I mean, SGA had a fantastic game, scored 34 points on 11 of 16 shooting. Jamal Murray had a terrible game, 4 of 16 from the floor, 1 for 8 from 3. And overall, Denver just could not take care of the basketball. They had 17 turnovers in the game. And towards the end of the game, when it started to get a little bit interesting, it was pretty interesting at halftime, honestly. But in the second half, Denver just unraveled, coughing the ball up, and then pretty much every time you do that against OKC, it goes the other way for points. So the Nuggets will need to be a little bit sharper when they do face the Thunder moving forward, but I'm not reading too much into a game in which, Brown and Gordon were both missing, because those are two of the best defensive players on Denver. And OKC, while we've talked a little bit about how they are a little disappointing offensively, they're good enough to take advantage of a defense that's missing their two best defensive players and two defensive players that, are all NBA caliber. So I think that was, not an expected result because I did take the Nuggets, but what they did winning that game on the road was not surprising. It was the margin that they did it by, but still not something that I'm too worried about as a Denver backer moving forward. I have the Nuggets plus 850 to win the finals. I still think they can do it. I still think they're going to do it as long as everybody's healthy. But yeah, we got to wait and see what these teams look like when they are at full strength. They are going to meet a few more times this season. So keep an eye on those. We'll talk about them on this podcast. So that was the takeaway in terms of games. Then there is the off the court stuff. And there was a pretty big trade. I guess I shouldn't say big when Giannis is out there, but the Cavaliers traded DeAndre Hunter to the Sacramento Kings in a deal that brought back Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder. I absolutely love this trade for the Cavs. Not only do I think that they got better, they also saved some money. And they got rid of a player that was playing absolutely terrible for them this year. DeAndre Hunter shooting 30% from three this year. He has been a net negative on the defensive end. Like I just think that what they expected to get from him was a 3-and-D player, and I don't think that they got either of that from him. I think that Hunter actually, ever since he came out of college, has been a little bit disappointing defensively. I mean, he was a big part of those Tony Bennett Virginia teams that were fantastic on the defensive end, but he did not become an elite defender in the NBA by any stretch. Like I think that he's been disappointing on that end of the floor and is kind of living on that college reputation to this point. And I think that he was unhappy in Cleveland, sounded like he wanted to be traded, and you bring in two players that I really like for him. That's a huge win. Keon Ellis is a player that a lot of people have been saying could be like an Alex Caruso type where it's a 3-and-D player on a bad team, kind of hiding in plain sight. Get him to a good team and see what he can do. And I do think he's going to be really good for this Cavaliers team. I think that he provides them another floor spacer, somebody that can take on some of the more difficult perimeter assignments defensively. And there's really good insurance here now with Ellis and Schroeder in for if Darius Garland's toe just continues to be a nagging problem the rest of the season. They now have a backup point guard in Schroeder that can come in and play big minutes, can create for his teammates, can go, can score, can defend, a feisty player too that I really like in a playoff series. We saw him, create all sorts of problems for the Knicks last year in that awesome Pistons Knicks series. And then Ellis, I think, is just a perfect player for a postseason, environment. So really, really like what the Cavs did there. Would also say that, like, I've seen other people talk about this. See Matt Moore talk about it. I saw Michael Pena from The Ringer. They've both mentioned that this move does kind of open up the possibility for Cleveland to get involved in the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes. It would take them dumping Lonzo Ball's contract, and then you kind of have to figure out the compensation. Like, I don't know what it would be if it's a trade of Mobley going to Milwaukee. Maybe Milwaukee wants to build around, an awesome two-way center that is just entering the prime of his career. That might be a decent move for them if they can get, Mobley and some picks. That might be a win for them. Otherwise, you can work out a 3-team deal. Like, I do think that the Cavs, Rockets, and Bucks could probably work something out where you get Garland going to Houston, Jared Allen goes somewhere, or maybe it has to end up being a multiple. But if you could find a way to keep Mobley and get Giannis to Cleveland, that becomes very interesting as well. So I'll just throw that out there, is that I do think that there's something with maybe like Giannis to Cleveland, Garland to Houston, and then Milwaukee gets whatever the assets are in terms of draft pick compensation. But I should mention, like, I wanted to talk about Giannis a little bit. It does sound like there are 4 teams that are emerging as the front runners, and they're the 4 teams that we've kind of expected. It's Miami, Minnesota, New York, and Golden State. The reason I kind of brought up Cleveland is because I think that the Cavaliers and the Rockets together can scrape together a package that beats all of these teams. I think that these teams, the 4 that are being mentioned for Giannis right now, don't have enough to offer to get a superstar of his caliber. Maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe the Bucks decide we want to move on and we want to do right by Giannis by sending him to a team that he's happy with. We're fine with getting a weaker package, but it is kind of disgusting to see what some of these deals look like for Giannis. And I think when looking at these 4 teams specifically, which we should, because I think it was Shams Charania that reported that these are the 4 teams now in the mix. It sounds still like Golden State would be the front runner if he's dealt at the deadline. I understand the pick compensation stuff. I understand that, betting against Golden State's future is a smart move, but it's still somewhat underwhelming. And I've now seen multiple places that Golden State would be keeping Jimmy Butler and trading Draymond in this deal. That's something that I do not understand whatsoever. I mean, you're talking about a player in Giannis that, while he's still incredible, probably only has like 3-4 years left of playing at a high level. And this is one of them. So playing a year out where Butler is going to be recovering from a torn ACL this season, not having Draymond and just playing pretty much Steph and Giannis against everyone, that seems like a waste of a year for Giannis. And then next year, I don't know how you could be so sure that Jimmy Butler is going to come back and be fine. I mean, he's 37 starting in September. He'll be 37 years old, coming off a torn ACL. Probably will take him a few months at the beginning of the year to get himself right. And I just don't know that he's ever going to look like an all-star again after suffering an injury like that this late in his career. So I would personally be trying to move the Butler contract out and keeping Draymond, even if the fit between Giannis and Draymond is a little wonky. Like, I know those are two non-shooters, but at least they're two like elite defensive players. And, you know, you still have the playmaking from Draymond. The shooting has been a little bit better from Draymond this year. Like, I would just rather have a healthy player than have a player that is recovering from a torn ACL and is, you know, very, very old. I just don't like it at all for Golden State. I mean, I get it. It's like you're not giving that much to get one of the best players in the league. I just don't like that aspect of it, choosing Butler over Draymond, especially when you consider what Draymond's done in Golden State in his career. He is a Warriors legend. I think that'd be a little bit cold to send him out and not give him the chance to compete with Steph and Giannis. But that's my take on that team specifically. The other three teams, I think that Miami has the most to offer. I also have seen a few places that New York is not interested in shaking up the roster that much. I don't think that the Knicks have enough to get him to begin with, even if like Giannis desperately wants to go to the Knicks. And like the Bucks are willing to trade him to a team he wants to go to, I still think New York doesn't have enough. Like, I don't know why Milwaukee would want Cat or Bridges or any of these guys unless you're making a 3-team deal where another team comes in and gives you a ton of assets for them. But I don't know why another team is looking to trade a ton for Towns. So I don't like really any of these packages. I think the Heat is probably the most interesting one. If you can get Hero, Khalil Ware, and a bunch of picks, that's a solid package, because I'm pretty high on Ware. I do worry a little bit about the fact that Eric Spoelstra is a great coach and doesn't seem to want to play him. That's never a good thing, always a big red flag. It's the same thing with Golden State and Kuminga. Like, why should I want somebody that a great basketball mind doesn't think can help a team win? But Ware is probably the best young player that they will get when looking at any of these teams. And I do think Tyler Hero is injury prone, but smack in the middle of his prime and a borderline all-star. You're at least getting something. He's also a Milwaukee guy. He's a Wisconsin guy. I think that would at least please the fans of Milwaukee, and you still get some picks. So that trade is probably the best of the four, but it's a really interesting situation because this deadline is coming up. We're going to do a trade deadline special on Wednesday, hopefully, with Jonathan Von Tobel and Kelly Bidlin both joining me to talk about some of the moves that we might see, some of the moves we want to see, what moves would actually impact betting odds. We'll talk about all of it. But yeah, as the deadline approaches, I personally think Milwaukee should wait and just hope that a team gets eliminated early in the postseason and just kind of goes all in on Giannis. Like a team like the Rockets, even if they are not getting Amen Thompson, I'd prefer a package of like Shepherd, Eason, and picks to anything that you're seeing available at the deadline. So that's my take on the Giannis situation as of right now. But yeah, it's an interesting one, and we will definitely be diving back into it the rest of the week. But attention, any listeners who are new to VSiN, signing up for our free daily newsletter is a great way to catch up. Delivered straight to your inbox every morning, VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, and strategies for the day's betting menu. Sign up for free now at vsin.com/newsletter and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That's vsin.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. All right, well, it's only 4 games for tonight, but we have 3 picks, and I do want to recap the best bets for this evening just so you know exactly what you're leaving with tonight. I have the Pacers plus 7.5 at minus 126 to win 1.5 units against the Rockets. I also played the Pacers at plus 205 to win the game outright, risking 0.5 units. I have a parlay of the Hornets money line against the Pelicans with the 76ers on an alternate spread of plus 10.5 versus the Clippers. That's minus 130. I'm playing that to win 1.5 units. And I have Rudy Gobert to record a double-double at plus 105 against the Grizzlies. It's those 3 picks for me for tonight. I probably won't add anything. I do potentially have something in that Memphis-Minnesota game, but that will be much later pending the injury report. So if you really care for something in terms of a side or a total there, head over to vsin.com, head over to the Pro Picks page, see if I add something right before tip-off. But as of right now, it's those 3 picks. We had a brutal Friday, but we bounced back in a big way on Saturday, also won a tiny bit on Sunday. So coming in with, two green days in a row, hopefully we can keep it up and keep winning again. Last week was a little bit ugly, but I do feel like the reads have been there. So I'm expecting, some solid results this week. But yeah, enjoy your night of hoops and good luck if you're tailing me, and make sure you join us for the Tuesday episode of Hardwood Handicappers.